Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Oh, welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. Happy to have renowned author and cultivation expert Jorge Cervantes back. Welcome, Jorge.
Oh, thank you very much,
Good to
Paul.
see you.
It's
Thanks
good
for
to be
coming
here
in on
again.
short notice here.
Well, yeah, I was just in town, thought I'd stop by.
I'm glad you did. We're going to see each other in Columbia here in about another week or two. So
yeah, about a week and a half, I'll see you there.
And then over in the wings, Mr. John Cornett's back from his surgery. Welcome back, John.
I want to go.
How you feeling?
I'm good. Probably not good enough to go to Columbia, though.
Oh, well, you know.
I just had a surgery.
Right. Well, I'm glad you made it here at least.
Me too.
And you're feeling better after the surgery? It's only been,
well,
what, like
this stuff here I can
8
move
days?
without a piece of stainless steel poking into my L3 vertebrae, but otherwise there's still a little soreness.
Yeah.
in a couple
Well, I
weeks or
imagine if
so.
they're cutting you open, it makes you sore.
Yes, sir, but the aftermath will be I'll be able to have more mobility and
Hallelujah.
feel a lot better. Yes, sir.
So you got a song you're ready to run? We got a lot
sir.
of exciting news. We've had the state of Michigan legalize marijuana. North Dakota came close but didn't do it, and a couple new medical marijuana states. We've got our hemp news segment, videos with Jorge, and we'll be back right after this.
I feel the force.
Okay.
Michigan voters overwhelmingly passed Proposition 1, legalizing the retail sale of marijuana for adults. With the approval of the voter-initiated Proposition 1, Michigan has become the 10th state, not counting the District of Columbia, to legalize the possession and use of marijuana for adults. Voters in Michigan sent a resounding rebuke to their state's failed policy of prohibition and elected to follow a new, more sensible path to regulation and legalization. Instead of arresting thousands of citizens a year for possession of a plant, Michigan will now be able to prioritize law enforcement resources toward combating violent crime, honor personal freedom and civil liberties, end the racist application of weaponizing prohibition laws against communities of color, and collect tax revenue that was previously going to the black market and put it toward important social programs such as education and infrastructure development. Proposition 1 permits those over the age of 21 to possess and grow personal use quantities of cannabis and related concentrates, while also licensing activities related to commercial marijuana production and retail marijuana sales. For years, Michigan has been one of the leading states in the nation in total annual marijuana-related arrests. In 2016, police made over 22,000 marijuana-related arrests at an estimated cost to Michigan taxpayers of over $94 million. That wasteful and harmful practice ends today. According to recently compiled nationwide survey data provided by Gallup, 66% of U.S. citizens, including majorities of self-identified Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, believe that the adult use of marijuana should be legal. In North Dakota, 59% of North Dakota voters rejected Measure 3, a grassroots initiative that sought to strike marijuana from much of the criminal code and would have ended most marijuana-related arrests. Though the campaign was ultimately unsuccessful, we're proud of your efforts there in North Dakota. I personally know how you feel since I put several initiatives out there that didn't pass before we legalized marijuana in 2014. In Missouri, 66% of Missourians approved Amendment 2, which amends the Constitution to permit physicians to recommend medical marijuana at their sole discretion and provides licensed dispensaries access to qualifying patients. The measure beat out two competing marijuana ballot initiatives, neither of which received more than 50% support from the voters. In Utah, a state that's among the most conservative, 53% of Utah voters approved Proposition 2, which facilitates legal medical cannabis access to qualified patients. In the coming months, state lawmakers are anticipated to hold a special legislative session with regard to implementing the new law. We're calling on state politicians to respect the will of the electorate and move swiftly to enact the Utah Medical Cannabis Act in a manner that comports with both the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. With yesterday's passage of medical marijuana legalization in Missouri and Utah, 33 U.S. states now recognize the therapeutic use of cannabis by statute. That doesn't include some states that just allow CBD. From Washington, D.C., it's been a big week in the news for all over, especially with the midterm elections. And this was one of the big fallouts from that. United States Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Wednesday announced his forced resignation from the Justice Department as Attorney General. Sessions was a long-standing vocal opponent of marijuana policy reform who once opined, quote, "good people don't smoke marijuana," end quote. As Attorney General, his office rescinded the 2013 Cole Memorandum, which directed prosecutors not to interfere in state-sanctioned marijuana activity. However, that action encouraged numerous members from both parties to strongly criticize the office and eventually led to introducing a new bill, the States Act, strengthening the 10th Amendment through entrusting states, States Act of 2018. Bipartisan House and Senate legislation that seeks to protect jurisdictions that have legalized marijuana from federal intervention. Sessions' Chief of Staff, Matt Whitaker, will serve as acting Attorney General until a permanent appointment is confirmed, unless the courts throw him out. There were some major changes in the U.S. House of Representatives that bode well for the prospects of future federal marijuana law reform. Perhaps most importantly, Congress's chief marijuana prohibitionist, Texas Republican Pete Sessions of Dallas, lost his re-election bid. Representative Sessions used his position as chairman of the House Rules Committee to block House floor members from voting on over 3 dozen marijuana-related amendments during his leadership tenure. His action single-handedly killed a number of popular bipartisan-led reforms, such as facilitating medical cannabis access to military veterans like me and amending federal banking laws so that licensed marijuana businesses are treated like other legal industries. But Representative Sessions is not the only prohibitionist leaving Congress. And by the way, Pete Sessions, the House Republican, is not related to Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions of the late Attorney General. That's my last time, I guess, to say Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions. But anyway. Virginia Republican Bob Goodlatte, who is House Judiciary Chair, failed to schedule any significant marijuana bills for hearings, has retired and will no longer be in Congress following the conclusion of this term next month. With Sessions and Goodlatte out of power, it's likely that members of the House will once again weigh in and pass a number of important cannabis legislative reforms in 2019. In addition to these notable departures, a number of pro-cannabis congressional candidates and incumbents won their race, including leading reformers like our own Portland Representative Earl Blumenauer, Justin Amish of Missouri, Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, David Joyce of Ohio, and Barbara Lee of California. In key state races, 4 states, Connecticut, Michigan, Minnesota, and Illinois, voters elected governors who openly campaigned on a platform that included legalizing adult marijuana use. In 2 other states, California and Colorado, voters elected governors who have a long history of spearheading legalization reform. And in Maine and New Mexico, 2 of the nation's most rabid marijuana prohibitionists, Paul LePage and Susana Martinez, have been replaced by governors who are open to enacting common sense cannabis reform. Voters in Ohio and Wisconsin approved a series of binding and non-binding local marijuana reform initiatives on Election Day. In Ohio, voters in 5 cities, including Dayton, with a population of 140,000, approved municipal ordinances seeking to either eliminate or significantly reduce local fines and penalties associated with marijuana-related offenses. Several other Ohio cities and towns, including Athens, where the University of Ohio is, had previously enacted similar voter-initiated ordinances. In Wisconsin, where I was just at the Great Midwest Marijuana Harvest Fest last month, voters in 16 separate counties, including Milwaukee County, approved non-binding ballot questions expressing support for the legalization of cannabis for either medical purposes or for adult use. The results of these advisory questions bode well for the prospects of a potential statewide ballot measure in 2020. Such an effort would likely be endorsed by Wisconsin's new governor-elect Tony Evers, who in the past has expressed support for such a vote, stating, quote, "I'd support marijuana legalization, but I do believe there has to be more thoughtful, rigorous conversation around it as a state. So we would love to have a statewide referendum on this," end quote, Governor-elect Evers said. 64% of registered Wisconsin voters say marijuana should be legalized for use by adults, taxed and regulated like alcohol, according to a statewide October 2018 poll. In the United States Senate, longtime prohibitionist Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, publicly reaffirmed today that provisions lifting the federal prohibition of hemp will be included in the finalized language of H.R. 2, the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, otherwise known as the 2018 Farm Bill. The must-pass legislation is currently being debated by leadership in conference committee. McConnell told reporters, quote, "If there's a farm bill, it'll be in there. I guarantee that. I don't want to overstate this. I don't know if it's going to be the next tobacco or not, but I do think it has a lot of potential. And as all of you know already, in terms of food and medicine, but also car parts, I mean, it's an extraordinary plant," end quote, Majority Leader McConnell said. The hemp-specific provisions, which Senator McConnell included in the Senate version of the Farm Bill, amend federal regulations to further expand and facilitate state-licensed hemp production, research, and commerce. The language also, for the first time, amends the Federal Controlled Substances Act of 1970 so that industrial hemp plants containing no more than 0.3%, or 1/3 of 1%, THC are no longer classified as a Schedule I controlled substance. And that's in page 1182, section 1268, says, quote, "Conforming changes to Controlled Substances Act," end quote. Senator McConnell previously shepherded hemp-related language in the 2014 version of the Farm Bill, which permits states to establish hemp research and cultivation programs absent federal approval. A majority of states have now enacted legislation to permit such programs. Lawmakers are seeking to finalize and pass the 2018 farm legislation prior to the year's end, within the next 2 months. Out of Washington, D.C., Epidiolex, a prescription medicine containing a standardized formulation of plant-derived cannabidiol, or CBD, is now available in pharmacies in all 50 states. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the product in June for the explicit treatment of 2 rare forms of severe epilepsy. In September, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration reclassified it from Schedule I to Schedule V, the lowest restriction classification available under federal law. Physicians at their discretion may also elect to prescribe the medicine off-label for marijuana conditions other than epilepsy. An annual prescription for Epidiolex is estimated to cost $32,500 per year, a price that the manufacturer says is in line with other FDA-approved anti-epileptic drugs. Epidiolex is the 4th marijuana-based medicine to receive FDA approval, joining Dronabinol, also known as Marinol, Nabilone or Sesamet, and liquid synthetic THC, which goes by the name Syndros. However, Epidiolex is the first FDA-approved medicine containing plant-derived, non-synthetic cannabinoids. Out of Tel Aviv in Israel, the use of medical cannabis mitigates many of the side effects associated with cancer chemotherapy, such as pain and nausea, according to data published in the international medical journal Acta Hematologica. Israeli researchers assessed the efficacy of medical cannabis administration in controlling chemotherapy-induced adverse effects in patients with Hodgkin's lymphoma. They reported that the use of cannabis was associated with improvements in the subject's pain relief, nausea, appetite, and general well-being. According to the study, they said, quote, medical cannabis use is prevalent in this Hodgkin's lymphoma cohort and appears to be effective in ameliorating chemotherapy-related adverse events, end quote, the authors concluded. This study, medical cannabis use by Hodgkin's lymphoma patients, experience of a single center, appears in Acta Hematologica. From Denver, Colorado, a Denver jury has rejected a civil complaint that sought to use federal anti-racketeering laws, or RICO laws, as a mechanism for shutting down licensed marijuana operators. Plaintiffs in the lawsuit, which was initially backed by the anti-drug organization Safe Streets Alliance, argued that the presence of a nearby licensed marijuana retailer was detrimental to their property value and sought millions of dollars in damages. The jury rejected their claims and found that the businesses were not responsible for any alleged monetary losses. It's not yet known whether the plaintiffs plan to appeal the verdict. Similar RICO suits have been filed against marijuana facilities in other states, including a couple here in Oregon, but have yet to be successful. Out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Democratic Governor Tom Wolf has signed legislation into law eliminating mandatory driver's license suspensions for a wide range of non-driving related crimes, including marijuana-related offenses. House Bill 163 in Pennsylvania amends existing law so that those aged 21 or older convicted of certain drug-related offenses unrelated to driving are no longer subject to the revocation of their license. Some 150,000 Pennsylvanians are estimated to have had their licenses suspended for non-driving related drug crimes between the years 2011 and 2016. In 1991, federal lawmakers threatened to withhold transportation funding to state governments unless they mandated license suspensions for drug-related crimes, even if they occurred in your bedroom or out in the forest. Today, fewer than a dozen states continue to impose these bans. The new law abolishing the ban takes effect in Pennsylvania in 6 months. From Los Angeles, California, cannabis's impact on driving performance is generally less pronounced than that of alcohol, according to a paper published by a pair of New York University researchers and Botech Analysis. Of course, we cannabis users have known that for a long time. The authors reported that the use of cannabis, absent the simultaneous use of other drugs or alcohol, creates, quote, only a fraction of the risk associated with driving at the legal 0.08 blood alcohol content threshold, let alone the much higher risks associated with higher levels of alcohol, end quote. By contrast, they report that the simultaneous use of alcohol and cannabis is linked to higher levels of driver impairment than either alone, a finding that's consistent with much of the available literature. The authors concluded, quote, the maximum risk for cannabis intoxication alone, unmixed with alcohol or other drugs, appears to be more comparable to the risks such as talking on a hands-free cell phone, which is legal in all states, than to driving with a blood alcohol content above 0.08, end quote. As a result, the authors suggest that as a matter of policy, stoned driving alone, not involving alcohol or other drugs, should be treated as a traffic infraction rather than as a crime unless aggravated by recklessness, aggressiveness, or high speed. In virtually all instances, cannabis-influenced driving is classified as a criminal rather than an administrative offense here in the United States. Investigators also argued against the imposition of per se limits, which criminalize the act of operating a vehicle with trace levels of either THC or THC metabolites in one's blood or urine. The authors determined, quote, blood THC is not a good proxy either for recency of use or impairment, and the dose effect curve for fatality risk remains a matter of sharp controversy. Moreover, the lipid solubility of THC means that a frequent cannabis user will always have measurable THC in his or her blood, even when that person is not used recently and is neither subjectively intoxicated nor objectively impaired, end quote. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the American Automobile Association take a similar stance against the use of blood THC concentrations as per se evidence of psychomotor impairment. Per se limits and zero tolerance per se thresholds are not based upon scientific evidence of consensus. The enforcement of these strict liability standards risks inappropriately convicting unimpaired subjects of traffic safety violations, including those persons who are consuming cannabis legally in accordance with other state statutes. This paper, Driving While Stoned, Issues and Policy Options, is available online. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. Mr. John Cornett is back and healthy enough to play us some music. Hey, John.
Well, I don't drive while I'm stoned, Paul. You know, I don't drive because I'm having bad seizures. Until I get that totally under control, I'm going to stay off behind the wheel. Even though my doctor says, you know what, you haven't had a seizure in 10 months, so what the heck. But anyway, this song right here, I got almost got shut down in a park back in Forest Grove about 15 years ago. I wrote it, and I couldn't wait to play it for the folks in music in the park. And it goes like this. It's called Americanja. Am I on back there? I don't hear no guitar coming through. Okay. Sure. Thank you very much. Ganja. We want Americanja. Ganja, we learn to grow Americanja. Stick it in the ground, water it down, Americanja. Woohoo! Ganja, we need Americanja. Ganja. We need to share Americanja. It's renewable energy, fine clothes for you and me. Americanja. Woohoo! Ganja. We like Americanja. Ganja. We like to use Americanja. For food or medicine, prohibition must end. Americanja. Woo-hoo. Check it out. Ganja. We want Americanja. Ganja. We want to use Americanja. Sometimes we get high. Yes, sometimes we do get high. Americanja. Woohoo!
All right, thank you, John. Americanja. Okay, hey, welcome back, Jorge. It's good to have you back here.
Thanks so much,
pleasure.
Paul.
My pleasure. So you're in Portland. You lived in Portland for a long time. You're really an Oregon guy, an Oregon native at heart.
I was born in Oregon. I was born in Ontario, Oregon. Yeah, and I did a little bit of work over there recently. I used to work for the newspaper there, the Ontario Argus Observer, and one of my friends, or well, new friends, because all the people that I worked with are gone now, or well, they don't work there any longer. But the thing is, they had a deal where they had outlawed cannabis dispensaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I helped them a little bit, but basically everybody over there helped a lot more than me.
So they voted that out, didn't they?
Yeah.
They voted it out in Klamath Falls as well. I think they threw out the ban on dispensaries in several places.
Yes, they sure did. There was some severe
Police pushback is what it is. These parasitic police officers who've latched on to us and fed off of us for all these decades are finally pushed back a little bit, and they want to be able to keep enforcing these laws. And if I see a lot of them trying to enter the marijuana industry,
well,
you know?
Those guys, I mean, I have to say, I hope I don't piss a lot of people off, but
that's what this show's about.
Really gets under my skin, because those guys, they sell fear. Mm-hmm. They sell fear. That's all they do, and they're quite good at it.
And it's all about their pocketbook too. I mean, they act like they're protecting us, but
they
really
don't give a rip about us.
Right. Yeah.
Can I say that?
Yes, you can.
Okay,
this
I can
is
say
cable
shit. Okay.
Access.
Yeah, they really don't care about us. They care about themselves, and they care about their own little agenda.
Yeah.
And you know, if you guys want to be like a cop and follow them around, great. I have to say, but there's some good cops too. You know? I mean,
of course.
We need
Thank
them and
goodness. If
everything.
somebody's doing something violent or stealing, hey, I'm going to call the police and hope they help me. And
nobody with the cannabis world is really making big troubles, you know?
Yeah. And we're peaceful.
Yes.
And that's why they like to arrest us, because we were no danger to them. That was another thing. Is they knew that it was a lot safer to bust a pot smoker than a crack dealer, for instance.
When I was in Colombia last time, I met a cop there. These cops from Chicago were down there on a junket. You know, a bunch of them talk Spanish, so they go down there, and they do whatever they can't do in town. You know, in Chicago. And the guy was telling me all kinds of stuff about what cops do. But you know, the funny thing is, this guy was a homicide detective, and he said, you know, those punks, he said like this to me, he says, you know, those punks that they go and pot growers, he goes, nobody's got any respect for them. Because they're not real cops. They're like a bunch of punks. He called them punks. He used the same word.
Well, the cops know they were corrupt. Those cops that went into the drug racket, they were selling drugs. I mean, well, I was an expert witness in over 100 different cases. And every time I looked in the evidence locker, you know, they had pictures of big flowering plants, but you'd look in the evidence locker and there were a few leaves and all the buds had been trimmed away in almost every case. And when I tried to bring that up in court, you know, they just pretended that didn't happen. They never heard me say that. But
yeah, it's a real education, isn't it? You look at reality and you look at what you see in front of you on TV.
We need to expand natural individual people's rights, and that's what we need to do, is to lower the rights of these collectives, whether they be corporate or governmental, and give people more rights. So that's
we're losing a lot of our rights right now.
With corporations given more rights than people by Citizens United, and the buildup of artificial intelligence. You want
an algorithm making your decisions?
No.
Or you want somebody that you can look in the face?
I want to make my own decisions.
There you go.
Yeah, that's even better. We are taking phone calls tonight. If you have a question for Jorge or myself about marijuana, medical marijuana, especially cultivation, then give us a call at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. And I think we have a caller who's been standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello, hi. Thank you for your show, and thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I have a question regarding the Oregon home grow.
Okay.
I guess there's no limit on how many seedlings you can have.
Well, you can have 4 flowering plants. That's the limit. And so non-flowering plants don't count for your 4. And it's 4 plants per household, not per person. So if you have a house of 1 person or 10 people, you can only have 4 flowering plants per household according to the current Oregon law.
But so it has to be 4 female flowering plants.
If they're flowering, that's considered mature. So You probably, if you're growing for flowers, you probably don't want to have the males out there. I recommend using clones.
Well, no, I'm a breeder too, so I do pollinating and so forth. Mm-hmm. But as far as the count, the plant count, that's only for female flowering plants that they're counting, isn't it? They're not going to count males.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I can't say for certain. I'll tell you what. Let me do a double check on that and get back to you on next week's show.
Okay, but then the other thing is, if you do have a number of seedlings, and then, you can have a bunch suddenly turn, and their sex, comes out, like all of a sudden. So all of a sudden, you can be out of compliance.
That's true. That's true. You just have to be really careful. If you're in the Portland area, they aren't really going to be enforcing those laws against you in Multnomah County. But in other counties, they're going to be a little bit more strict than they are here in Multnomah County. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for calling in. Have a good night. Bye. Again, if you're out there and you have a question for us, give us a call at that number there on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. What do you think about that, Jorge?
Boy, there's a lot of really difficult calls on this one, because you've got male and female. Technically, flowering is flowering. And at what point does the plant flower? Yeah. Well, it takes 2 weeks for a cannabis plant to start flowering. So how do they measure it? Do they look at the first initial signs? How much?
These police officers don't know, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, why would they?
Yeah.
Why would they? Their specialty is law and order, not botany or biology.
Exactly.
So I'd say stay out of harm's way, but at the same time, if it's a male plant, what does a male plant look like flowering? Do they have an example of it right there? Do you have to take it to court? If you get in the cop's face, he's probably going to want to get back in your face. So be respectful. The guy's also a human being, or the woman is also a human being. But you need as many clones as you can get.
That's right, especially if you're breeding.
You need as many seedlings as you can get. Just make sure 4 of them are mature flowering. It
was just that reason. I sponsored ballot measure 80 here in Oregon in 2012, which we lost with 47% of the vote, but it would have allowed individuals to grow cannabis for personal use without a plant limit definition. Excellent. And that was something that the opponents, the police and media picked up on to denigrate our initiative. Well, we also would have created a cannabis commission with industry, cannabis industry people, so that we'd have people who know what they're doing in regulating the industry. Instead, we have liquor store owners and beer manufacturers that are on this cannabis board.
It's about money.
Yeah.
It's about money and who gets their piece. We're seeing the same thing. We're seeing the same thing in Colombia right now. It's just come up in Mexico as well. Mexico is just legalizing cannabis right now.
Yeah,
in fact,
the Supreme Court of Mexico just
that
struck
was
down.
really interesting because it's a human right to be able to grow cannabis.
Yeah.
Who'd ever think that would come out
I've
of Mexico?
been saying that since I was a teenager.
Well, excellent.
I was never in the closet myself.
And now the United States of Mexico, that's what they call it.
Yeah, that's it. Estados Unidos, Mexico.
Yeah, of Mexico is of the same mind.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And now Obrador, the new president-elect, December 1st was when he goes into office. He said he's already sponsored a series of laws that, proposed laws that are going to legalize cannabis. And they want to have 20 plants per person, just like in Colombia. These guys...
That's a lot more reasonable.
Yeah,
20 plants per person.
Way
4
more
plants
reasonable.
per household is difficult,
But and you look at the first 2 countries in South America, or Latin America, Mexico and Colombia, the first 2 countries, These countries
Uruguay
are
too.
well, Uruguay, but these are big drug countries. Uruguay was the first. That was Pepe Mujica, you know, the president.
And they've been very slow in implementing it.
Oh, it's a whole different. It's kind of like a can of worms down there because the politics that happen. But these two countries, Colombia and Mexico, they are both way ahead of the United States. Way ahead of the United States, as is Canada. The United States is sandwiched in between these two progressive countries, you know, and United States is way behind because the politics here, all they want to do...
They're non-democratic.
No, well...
The whole electoral college and the Senate giving, you know, the voters of Delaware have 2 senators with about 1.5 million people, and the voters in California have 2 senators with 40 million people.
That's true. That's true.
That's not democratic.
How many of those senators are lawyers?
Yeah, they're almost all of them, right?
Yeah, about 97%. They're all lawyers. They're all lawyers.
You know, speaking of Colombia, we have a video that you have put up on Facebook of just a little highway stop you made in Colombia. We're going to roll right now. It's only a couple minutes, and we have some other videos as well, but stay tuned. We'll be right back after this video from Colombia, South America.
Okay, here we are. This is Jorge Cervantes. I'm here. I'm just showing you the countryside. It's kind of, we're getting up a little bit higher in elevation. We can see a plantation over there. They told me we're going up the road here. I don't know how far, but there's several big plantations up here. 1,500, 2,000 plants, I'm guessing. But we were just going along, and I saw this garden here, and I thought, boy, I better stop and take a look. And here we are. I can't really get over there, but, you know, we're on the road. I thought, oh, this would be a good idea. You can see all the bananas down there, the banana trees down there. There's a drying house there you can see. And then over there, that black cover, that's got to be a clone place, a clone bed. But I think that goes all the way down the hill to the bananas, to the big trees down there. And then you can see the road we came up. It's pretty rough. It's bounced all over the place. We've been going straight up for a while. And here we go. Well, that's it. Oh yeah, and there was a couple more gardens over there. I'm not even going to bother to show you. They're all over up this canyon in Toribio, Cauca, Colombia. We'll see you later. This is Jorge Cervantes.
Here, so that's from Cauca, near Toribio. I went on a tour there. I know our friend Don Wirtschafter's opened a hotel there. There've been, you know, they implemented a peace treaty in 2016 when I first went, and it seemed perfectly safe, but there's been some criminal gang activities in there.
There was a lot that happened there. There's three groups, you know, the FARC. They said they gave up, you know. The Santos, the president of Colombia, he got the Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the, I don't know, it's like 30, 40-year dispute.
52 or 53 years.
Yeah, it was
forever.
Long time. I mean, it was, Colombia's been a very violent place for a long time. And these guys are all caught in the middle. I don't know, you saw the guy on the motorcycle that was, the guy was hanging out with all the time, El Marino. His house got hit by some pretty serious bombs, and it blew it up in Toribio. But what's going on there now is it's all Indian reservation, or well, Indian area. They call it the NASA. It's I forget. I was there. I talk Spanish all the time, but it's a conjunto of all the different tribes. It's an association of all these different tribes. They call them NASA, NASA, and what they are able to do there, they can grow all the coca leaves they want, or for cocaine, and then they can also grow all the cannabis they want with no worries. But
it's neat at night seeing all these little rectangles lit up on the side of the mountain, because in Colombia, being right on the equator, they've got 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. You want to tell our viewers why they have to do that?
It's well, the cannabis plant needs, it's it needs 12 hours of darkness to flower, and if it doesn't have 12 hours of darkness, it won't flower. So in order to keep it in the vegetative growth stage, they put the lights out. And it's incredible. You're out there in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of nowhere. There's mountains and everything, but you can see...
It's like Hawaii with the steep mountains.
Yeah, you can see...
These rectangles all over the mountainsides.
Everywhere, everywhere. Yeah. I've put other videos up on YouTube that you can see on my channel. Just type in Jorge Cervantes into YouTube, and you can find tons of stuff about
hundreds.
Colombia.
You know, we're both going back to Medellin, or Medellin, the way they pronounce it.
Medellin,
if you're in an English speaker, you might think it's pronounced Medellin.
No, Medellin.
Yeah, Medellin under most Spanish. But there in Colombia, I've heard them call it Medellin.
Medellin? Yeah.
So, but Medellin is about a 12-hour drive away from Cali and Toribio and where this violence is happening.
Yeah, it's
so
Toribio.
this conference we're going to is in Medellin.
Medellin.
And so it's safe, and it's a beautiful town. I know we had a good time traveling around and taking those cable cars.
Actually, Colombia is actually quite safe in a lot of places where you go. There's just things you got to watch out. It's way different than it was when Pablo Escobar was running the show, basically. You know, and he was the narco that really started the cocaine business or made it really popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
Thank goodness it's changed. It's safe there. And a lot of Americans go to retire there now.
That's correct.
Because it has a low cost of living, and food is good and cheap.
Yeah, that's all true.
We have a studio audience, and you're welcome to come down any Friday night. We have a live show and join us here in the studio audience. And there is a off-camera microphone that people can ask questions from. And we have a gentleman at that microphone who has a question. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. My name's Greg, and due to my disability all my life, I've had a lot of trouble getting jobs or keeping them. Usually people I work with are just very arrogant. So the question was, I'm planning to start a type of clothing company, and I'd love to put medical cannabis emblems on it. And I don't know if there's a catch to it, such as does it have to have a red cross next to it? Does it have to have actually 9 leaves? That kind of thing, you know?
There's no rule on that, but you probably want to trademark that so that you have your exclusive use. And there are some attorneys I can recommend, fellows help me get some trademarks on cannabis brands and other brands. So you've got to...
It is legal now because of all the work we put into it, voting for the right thing, Measure 80, things like that. Is there any state in the U.S. where it's not, maybe to stay away from? Or
you know, the trademark laws are federal by and large, but in order to overcome the federal laws that are currently in place against marijuana and its prohibition, it's good to first get your state trademark, and there's a state process to do that. And so we'll talk about that after the show since you're here. And we'll,
thank you.
Got a few people to recommend. You know some people getting trademarks? Or?
Yeah, the trademark thing, it's, you've got to, the cannabis, if it's with cannabis, if it promotes cannabis, you can't get one. I don't know. I've got a trademark attorney, so I don't really worry about that stuff so much because he just tells me what to do. It's a lot easier that way because I can't fill my head with all that stuff. I don't remember it.
Now, I've got a book here we'll try to close in on. This is the latest. How many editions has this book been through?
I think that's 6.
This is the 6th edition, and it's Marijuana Horticulture. This is the one I have been, I first read back in the 80s.
Right, right.
At that time, it didn't say Grower's Bible on it. And I told you when I met you there in about 85, this thing is my Bible. Well, I remember that.
Yeah, actually, it won the name of Bible.
Yeah.
Because everybody called it the Bible, so I was able to put it on there.
It's got just tons of pictures, and anything you need to know, you can just look up, and it's color-coded. So you've got every different question can be answered briefly, and I really like it. I highly recommend it. In fact, I've recommended it probably a few hundred times here on this show. And then right next to it we
this
have...
This book here is the...
Your newest one.
Well, let's see, the last one,
this
the first one you showed up.
This one.
The first one that you showed, that sold more than 1 million copies in 7 different languages.
I have a video where it's just come out in Russian, I think, right?
Yeah.
You've got it in Russian, so it's got to be.
It's in Russian. We're helping the Russian world grow.
Great. Then this is this your latest one here?
Yes. Yeah. This is
the Cannabis Encyclopedia. And it's just tons of pictures. What is it, 2,500 pictures?
Yeah, it's more than 2,000. I kept losing count. There's so many of them.
Yeah, and again, it's here we have harvesting and drying. We have a video on harvesting and drying here. There's, I always like to tell people, because I'm proud of it, you've got a few pictures from my garden in there. And then right here on page 100, there we have it. There's a couple big plants here in our Portland outdoor garden.
You actually had a wonderful garden that year. It was like the legal limit, 24 plants.
24 plants.
And I'll tell you, I could stand on your shoulders and I couldn't touch the top of the plant.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how tall they were.
Hey, there's some pictures from it.
And there we go. There we go. Yeah, they were huge, huge plants.
Yeah. Well, we start them indoors in February, and they're about 4 or 5 feet tall in May when we put them out.
Wow.
And then they just grow like a big ball and get bigger and bigger and bigger. If they're 15 feet tall, then they're 15 feet across, too.
That's correct.
And then you've got this book, which isn't marijuana specific. It looks like it's gardening for everything else. The gardening indoors with soil and hydroponics. And you use your non-name de plume, your real name, on this one, George Van Patten.
The reason I made that book was for the people that couldn't sell the cannabis book.
I see.
Everything except the sex of the cannabis plant is in there.
Uh-huh.
We use a code word, tomato.
Yeah. We've been using that a while. That's true. We have a video that you put up about drying. We also have another caller. Let's take the caller first, and then we'll run the video. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. I'm really new at smoking marijuana. I haven't done that since high school, which is a long time ago. And I've recently had a death of a very good friend, and so I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety and was diagnosed with PTSD. And so I went to a dispensary and said that CBD helps with depression instead of going to all these pharmaceutical antidepressants.
Yes.
But I don't want to get high or stuff. I'm already think about stuff too much already. So I go to this dispensary and they tell me different information about strengths and all this kind of stuff. And I just want to not feel depressed and more feel like happy and giggly and
not too high where you're disoriented. I get that.
I don't. Yeah, I don't. But then, what if at work they test you and then you have pot and then I don't want to be. I don't do drugs. So, and I know it's legal.
Well, you have to talk to your employer, because if you're using CBD, everybody has an endogenous cannabinoid system. So everybody will test positive for a little bit of cannabinoids in your system. And it's generally between 25 and 35 nanograms per milliliter of urine is the metabolite test. And metabolites have already been processed by your body. So this is your endocannabinoid system that has this background level of anandamide, which is an endogenous cannabinoid created by your brain and neurosystem. So if you're above 35 or 50 nanograms per milliliter, generally that's what triggers a positive test result. However, you can talk to your employer about your medicinal use, and see, tell them, hey, I'm on these pharmaceuticals and I don't like them. I want to try something with less side effects. So I want to take non-psychoactive CBD or cannabinoids, which might make me test positive, and see what your employer says. That way you don't run afoul of them before, without knowing about it in advance.
So in other words, like when you sit there and you know, have a couple drinks after work or something like that, and you just kind of kick back. But my friend, that's how he died, is he drank too much. Yeah. And so, but I want to feel better. So is there like a certain brand that is like, or a certain strand?
There is. You know, I personally,
sativa and the other one, that one makes you more high, and the other one doesn't.
It doesn't always affect people the same way. So you've got to try out a few different things. What I found for people that's tell me what you have is I vaporize cannabis, and some of the cannabinoids are still in the vaporized material, so people can put those into a little capsule and just take the capsule 2 or 3 times a day. They won't get high, but they'll have that background level of cannabinoids that help with anxiety, depression, and pain.
It has no THC in it.
It has some THC in it, but not enough to get you high if you're taking a small dose orally.
Okay, so what is the dose? What is the number that I'm looking for?
There are various capsule sizes, and I want to research that before I tell you specifically. I recommend, you know, we have a number. It's right here on the screen. Call my office at 503-235-4606, and I can give you more information about those capsules and some other alternatives. Okay, I can't really, this is a non-commercial show. We produce our show at Portland's Community Access Center, and so we can't really recommend specific products here. But if you call my office at that number, 503-235-4606, I can talk to you one-on-one and try to give you a little bit more guidance.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Thanks.
It's wonderful.
That's what I do.
There's so many people that need help like this, though, and there's so much misinformation. That's what I keep finding over and over, because there's very few regulations and everybody's an expert.
We have a video about drying your cannabis that we're going to run right now, and we'll be right back. As soon as they run it.
After you get your buds harvested, you can do one of two things. You can either just cut them and hang them like this, with the leaves hanging around them, and I'll tell you, this is okay, but you're making yourself a lot of work. What's going to happen is these are going to dry out, and it's going to take a lot longer for it to dry out, and it'll take and it'll dry out more unevenly, and then you'll have to cut all of this stuff off later when it's dry, and it's really tough to work with. So I'd advise not to do it like that. I'm so glad they left me this example so I could show this. What you want to do is you want to manicure your buds while the leaves are nice and soft and supple. That way it's a lot easier to cut the leaves off, and everything's easy to work with. The leaves kind of stick out and everything, and you can trim them a lot easier. And then after that, you can dry them. And check this out. You can dry these little babies. Look at that bud. This was totally trimmed with the machine, and afterwards lightly touched up by hand. And I'll tell you, that baby is beautiful. It's really a nice looking bud, and it's going to dry up just fine. In fact, I've got a bigger one right here in my pocket. Look at this baby. Oh, that's a nice bud. It's nice and tight, and it's just, it's real dense and thick too, you know. So what they do here is they dry these in these containers like this. They're really cool. You just pick one up and drop it, and there you go. You can harvest and dry a kilo. That's about 2.2 pounds in this container right here. And there's plenty of space in here for air to flow and stuff. Really a good thing. And then you just hang this from the ceiling, as you can see they've done here. And it's real cool because what they do is just come in here and write on a piece of paper when it was put in, and a little code here so they know what it is, and it's all open. They've got an air conditioner in here. They keep the temperature, boy, right now it's what I'm guessing about 76, 77 degrees, and it's the humidity is low. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm guessing it's around 55, 40, somewhere between 40 and 55. and at night it's going to rise a little bit, but that's okay, because what we want to do is have these buds here for several days, anywhere from 5 to 10 days, depending upon the humidity and stuff in the air. You just kind of have to check them. But remember, every time you put your buds in to dry, you want to write down what time it is when you put it in, put the buds in there, and then also the date and the strain, because I've seen so many people just mix all their strains together at the end because they don't know what the heck they have. But I love this little thing. Let's take a quick walk through. Wow. Wow. This is amazing. It's so cool that you can dry everything so quickly, or I mean, so efficiently here. Sure, you could have these could be thinner, but it just doesn't really allow the airflow. That's really important. Well, let's walk through here. Gosh, it's kind of like bumper cars here. Just move this. So this will just really give you an idea of what's here, the volume you can dry in an area quite efficiently and inexpensively. Wow, this is amazing. Sure. Have to ask.
Okay, tell them. All right, well, there's an interesting, and it obviously, if you have a dehumidifier in there, that's what an air conditioner does, is it dehumidifies the air with an air conditioner.
Exactly, it pulls the moisture out of the air, because what happens when you're drying something is all this moisture just bleeds out into the air, and you've got to get rid of it, because if you don't get rid of it, it just stays there, and well,
it can lead to mold.
Well, it certainly sets the stage for mold. If there's mold spores in the air, which there are, that's what happens. The mold starts. So it's best to lower the humidity. But if you lower it to below 50%, it dries things out too quickly. Because, see, the whole plant, it needs to dry evenly.
So the ideal humidity level is what, about 60%?
50, 60, right in there. It's hard to hold it at a specific level because the room's so big, it'll change levels of humidity from top to bottom and the temperature too, but approximately 50%. When you're trimming the plants, it should be above 70% because that keeps the leaves nice and supple. If it's too low when you're trimming them, they'll start to droop. Well, no, you start breaking things, and things don't go as well for you.
You know, we are about out of time. We've only got about a minute and a half left. You have some websites and hundreds of videos online. You want to tell our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is type in Jorge Cervantes into your web browser, and you'll find me. There's hundreds and thousands of pages of references and stuff. You can go to Amazon, buy my books. I've got other videos there on Amazon that High Times did. But if you really want to see free stuff, go to YouTube, type in Jorge Cervantes,
and
go
now
to
on
my
Vimeo
channel.
too.
And Vimeo as well. And High Times has a new site too. But they're really easy to find. There's a lot of pirated copies out there, actually millions and millions.
We play it here on our show almost every week.
It's
at least
about
one of them.
Over 100 million views.
Well, Jorge, I want to thank you for coming on. We're about out of time. I want to thank our viewers out there for watching. We'll be back next week. We've got Eddie Bigger from out on the coast talking about his travails. Tune in then and help us restore hemp.
Folks like tomatoes, some like rhubarb pie. I like when my vegetables get me a little high. May not be for everyone, may not fit your needs, but it's edible vegetable, more than just a weed. Better get on home. Ooh, I'm done up here. Ooh, thank you guys for showing up.
Thank you.
God bless you, brother. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's always fun. You know, anytime you're in town, any Friday night, you know, that you feel up to it, you're always welcome.